My grandma and grandpa on my mom's side were born and raised in Montenegro. My great-grandpa's house is where they and the whole family lived. Things were done differently in my culture, so if something in this story seems odd, it's just how things were done. Witches were and are very common back home in Montenegro. Most people couldn't afford doctors, and like my family, when you live surrounded by mountains and no one owns cars, you would go to the village witch doctor. This woman, who was a known witch, married my grandpa's brother. Before she could get pregnant, my grandpa's brother was murdered. So even though she didn't bear any children, my great-grandfather still kept her in the house as his daughter-in-law. The only thing I've heard about her is that she was an evil woman. Her and my grandparents lived in the same house. My grandma got pregnant for the first time and had a dream that a woman in a wedding dress came to her and said,
"Congratulations, you're pregnant and it's a boy. But do not get excited, because he's going to die."
My grandma had the baby, and before he was a couple of months old, he died. My grandma got pregnant again, and the same woman visited her in her dreams and said,
"Congratulations, you're pregnant and it's a boy. But just like before, don't get excited, because this child will be taken from you too."
Sure enough, it happened again. Before the baby was a year old, he died. The third time my grandma got pregnant, she believed the land or something had been cursed, so she had the baby far away from home. After a year or so, she woke in the middle of the night to the baby dying. She can't explain to us exactly what the baby was doing because our language doesn't have a lot of descriptive words. But she called the witch to come help. The witch cracked an egg on the baby's chest, and my grandma said that she saw the yolk slowly move up to the baby's neck and stay there. The witch turned to my grandma and said,
"The baby won't die with you in the room. You have to leave."
And suddenly, my grandma was not in the room. My grandma said the moment both of her feet were outside of the house, she heard her baby die. My grandma had 11 children, and only 5 of them are alive today. The worst she went through was when they had a son in Italy while they were refugees coming to America. And when he was 8 years old, he got hit by a car when his ball rolled into the street. My grandma and my family are convinced that the witch cursed her. This next story, it's about the Florida house. This was my dad's house in Clearwater, Florida. My grandparents moved out there in the early 90s, and the whole family experienced things there. And I wonder if anyone who's lived in the house after them, or even now, experiences it as well. My grandpa bought this foreclosed house. They lived in a condo or something in the meantime while they finished the house. My uncle told me that when he went there to smoke and chill with friends, the house had pentagrams spray painted on the walls, empty beer cans everywhere. So he assumed teens used to use the house to party and do weird shit while it was empty. He took a girl there one day, and he said he heard pipes banging upstairs. And when he went to the spot that he heard the pipes, they started banging downstairs. He thought it was weird. They finally moved in, and my aunt, the youngest sibling, came home from her first day of school crying. She said the kids were telling her how a girl hung herself in their attic. That's where both of my aunts slept. The attic wasn't like a crawl space either. It was a finished room. My other aunt, oldest sibling, said that the initials of the girl who supposedly killed herself were carved into the windowsill. My dad said he'd always see a girl in white in the house, but he never thought anything of it. My dad's side of the family are hardcore realists. He said he remembers sleeping, feeling the pressure of someone getting into bed with him, but no one was there. He'd sometimes even feel someone breathing on his neck. Craziest story is when the oldest aunt got engaged, and her fiancé was at the house playing cards with the family. They both told me that they, clear as day, saw a woman walking or floating in the kitchen in the attic. She had white on, and something white on her head. They were confused because my youngest aunt had gone to bed about an hour before. So my aunt ran upstairs to check if it was her sister, thinking maybe she had just showered. But my aunt was passed out, dry hair, and not wearing white. My grandpa, who is a foreign Albanian man, which is important because Albanian men have a toxic way of thinking that talking about this kind of stuff is embarrassing and that no man should mention it. So the fact that he admitted that it was true means it was definitely true. Well, he said that he would also see a girl walking around the house, and that one time he got so upset that she wasn't answering him, thinking it was his daughter, that he walked around the entire house looking for her. And one day, one of the family members, years after moving out, mentioned how they used to see a girl walking around, and everyone had one of those, "Oh my God, I saw it too," moments. In my early 20s, I joined and helped start a motorcycle club here in the Southwest. Our get-togethers started out as weekend rides out to the canyons and out to eat at the casino buffets. As we started to establish ourselves as an actual MC, we began hanging out Thursday nights, and we started to hit up bars and nightclubs after a night ride around town. One of these clubs was known to have ladies' night, where a male dancer would come out and strip down to his underwear for about an hour. After, the dance floor would open up, and that's when we would go back in from the patio area outside. We got well known at that place. One night, as I'm walking out to the patio, sipping on my beer, this older lady pulls me to the side. She looks me up and down, and then she asks if we could sit and talk. I agreed, and we sat outside. She tells me she's friends with one of the girls that's hanging out with one of my boys from the MC. She began to tell me that I have this bright light that walks around with me, a huge angel taking care of me. She said she just had to talk to me. Since I walked into the club, my light made the rest fade into darkness. Out of nowhere, before I can reply to her comments about the light, she says, "Hey, can I read your hand? You see, I'm a witch, but not a bad one. I only do white magic. Why do you think your friend over there has gotten out of so many bad places?" While pointing to an MC member. So, homegirl over here was the side chick of one of the guys. But he'd had it on the low, so we didn't even know. This was the first time he invited her to the club, with all of us hanging out. Looking at her, and then to my beer, I sip the last of it, and I put it down. I give her my hand. Now, I can't recall everything she told me, but there were some things she mentioned that just stuck with me. She told me first that I would be in an accident before the year ended, 3 months. And yes, I got into a small motorcycle accident. The second thing that stuck with me was she saw my future kids and wife. "I see 2 girls and your wife. She has blonde-colored hair. It seems like you know her, or you've crossed paths with her when you were younger." Now, 12+ years later, I'm married to someone that went to my high school, which I don't remember her, but my best friend says that he does. We also have 2 girls. My wife hates this part of my story because she says she has black hair. But when I met her, she was blonde. She just colors her hair every year. The last part I remember of her reading was that I would die of old age. People get mad at me when I mention that, or I joke about it. And look, I've had my fair share of accidents, a couple of them being cars and trucks, and I've counted about 13 motorcycle accidents. People around me can't believe I still walk around. To anyone reading my story, have you ever had your palm read? Have any of the things that they mentioned actually happened?